It was just after 10 p.m. on a Tuesday when I first noticed it. I had finished cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, our twins already tucked in and dreaming. The house settled into that soft, contented quiet you only get when the day's chaos gives way to night. The hum of the dishwasher filled the space like white noise, a subtle backdrop as I sank into the couch and reached for the remote. Routine. Predictable. Comforting. Until it wasn't. I clicked over to our streaming service, already thinking about what to watch. Lately, I'd been binging an old detective show, something from the early 2000s that I never got around to back in the day. But instead of picking up where I left off, the screen flashed. Incorrect password. I paused. Maybe I fat-fingered something. I tried again. Same result. That was odd. We shared the account, Laura and I. We'd had it for years. The password was a combination of our anniversary and the name of our first dog. Nothing either of us would forget. I tried a few more variations before giving up and reaching for my phone. Maybe the account just signed me out and she changed the password without thinking. But that didn't feel right. I texted her. Hey, did you change the Netflix password? She didn't reply. That in itself wasn't unusual. Laura was notorious for putting her phone down in another room and forgetting it existed. But something tightened in my chest anyway. It wasn't the password change that unnerved me, not really. It was the fact that she hadn't mentioned it. Laura was the type to announce things. Grocery store finds, office gossip, a new brand of cereal, she always shared. So why not this? After a few minutes of failed attempts, I requested a password reset. I knew the recovery email. Knew the password to that, too. Once in, I changed the streaming account password again, just to ensure I could access it, and logged into the app on the TV. The familiar home screen popped up, and I relaxed slightly. But then I saw the profiles. There were 4. Ours, of course. Mine labeled Dad, hers labeled Laura. Then there were Kids, the generic one we set up for the twins, brightly colored with cartoons and locked with parental settings. And the 4th one, Ben's Place. I blinked. My thumb hovered over the remote button. Ben? We didn't know any Ben. Not close enough for him to have his own profile on our account. I clicked on it. The icon was set to a pixelated skull with red eyes. The continue watching list filled the screen. Crime thrillers, stand-up specials, steamy romantic dramas, and one documentary about long-distance relationships. None of it matched what Laura or I ever watched. The usage history said the profile had been created 3 weeks ago. I backed out and checked the main settings. The recovery phone number had been changed to something I didn't recognize. So had the secondary email. That explained why I hadn't received any notifications. I sat back slowly, a cold coil wrapping around my spine. There was no Ben in our family. No cousin or friend or nephew named Ben. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had changed our password, created a new profile, and started watching content that didn't belong to either of us. And Laura hadn't mentioned a word. I opened our shared photo library and searched the name Ben. Nothing came up. I checked her contact list. She kept it synced on the cloud. There were 2 Bens. One was a mechanic we used years ago. The other didn't have a last name or any call history. Just Ben with a lowercase b and a blank profile picture. A single message sent 4 days ago. Tonight? Her reply had been a thumbs-up emoji. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. It could be a friend, a coworker, some group project I didn't know about. But that old instinct, the one that flared up when something felt wrong, was awake now, and it wasn't going back to sleep. I closed the message and walked upstairs. Laura was asleep in our bed, her long hair spread across the pillow like dark silk, her breathing slow and even. I stood there for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall, remembering all the nights we'd spent side by side like this. She looked peaceful, trusting. That made it worse. I turned, went back downstairs, and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop. I logged into the streaming account again and opened the viewing history for Ben's Place. The pattern was clear. Every few nights, late, usually between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., there was activity. Movies with titles that hinted at longing. Shows that centered around emotional betrayal, complex romantic entanglements, and reuniting with lost loves. One series, a Scandinavian drama about secret affairs, had been watched all the way through. 16 episodes in 4 days. I scrolled back further. At the same time those shows were playing, our own profile, Laura's, had gone completely inactive. The timestamps matched. It was like watching a ghost move through our digital life. Quiet, precise, and entirely out of place. I stared at the name, Ben's Place. The icon. The selections. I felt stupid for how long it took me to consider the obvious. Who the hell was Ben? It's funny how quickly your brain starts rewriting everything. Every smile becomes suspicious. Every late meeting, every moment she spent in another room. I thought of the night 2 weeks ago when she got up at midnight, saying she couldn't sleep. I woke up to find her downstairs, sitting in the dark with the TV on and her laptop glowing in her lap. She said she was watching cooking videos. There were no cooking shows in Ben's Place. I clicked over to her email. The account was still logged in on the home computer. She never changed her password. I searched Ben. Nothing. But when I searched streaming, I found an email from 3 weeks ago. One of those automated notifications. You've updated your password. It went to her inbox, not mine. And it was followed by another email to a separate address, one I'd never seen before, confirming the addition of a secondary user. It wasn't Gmail or Outlook. It was one of those encrypted providers. No identifying name, just a random string of letters. The email address of someone who didn't want to be found. The darkness in my stomach expanded. I stood, went to the liquor cabinet, and poured a double shot of bourbon, the kind I kept for special occasions. My hand trembled as I lifted the glass, but I didn't drink yet. Instead, I opened a blank document on my laptop and wrote one word in bold at the top of the page, Ben. Underneath it, I began listing everything I knew. Streaming profile created 3 weeks ago. Late night activity, 10 p.m. 2 a.m., Laura inactive during those windows. One contact in her phone named Ben. Message, tonight, with her confirmation. Encrypted secondary email linked to our account. I stared at the list, heart hammering. This was the digital equivalent of finding an unfamiliar toothbrush in your bathroom. A stranger's jacket on your side of the closet. Someone had left fingerprints all over our life. I clicked the TV remote again and highlighted Ben's Place. Hovered over it. Delete. But I didn't press the button. Not yet. I needed it there. I needed the evidence to stay for now. I needed to understand how deep this went before I made a single move. Because if Laura was lying to me, if she had brought someone into our home, into our family's digital space, then I wasn't going to confront her empty-handed. I was going to dismantle her deception piece by piece. And it was going to start right here, with Ben. For the next 2 days, I played the role of a husband on autopilot. I packed school lunches, attended a parent-teacher meeting, even laughed at a joke Laura made about the dog snoring louder than I did. But underneath it all, I was splitting in two. Half of me moved through the routine like a ghost. The other half, watching, listening, waiting. I knew better than to leap into confrontation without understanding what I was dealing with. Engineering had taught me that. Never assume the problem, diagnose it. Test it. Break it down to the smallest components. Then rebuild. So I started rebuilding the truth. I set up a second email address and quietly created a new user profile on the streaming account. I labeled it guest account, bland, forgettable. Then, through the admin settings, I enabled viewing activity reports for all profiles. I wanted timestamps, IP logs, device locations. Most users wouldn't bother. I needed to know where Ben's Place was logging in from. The answer made my stomach clench. The last 10 sessions came from our own IP address. Not her office. Not her phone. Our home. Every one of them logged in between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. when I was asleep. Or thought I was. The pattern was consistent. And yet, Laura hadn't left the house. So either someone was logging in from another device inside our home, or she was using her own device under a separate login. A hidden tablet, maybe? Or another laptop. I searched the house during the day while she was at work. Quietly. Methodically. I checked under the mattress, inside the piano bench, the backs of drawers. Nothing. Until I opened the linen closet in the upstairs hallway. Behind a stack of neatly folded towels sat a small, beat-up tablet with a cracked corner and no case. I turned it on. The battery was nearly dead, but it hummed to life long enough for me to see one thing. The Ben's Place profile logged in and open. My heart kicked into a gallop. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a borrowed account or a cousin crashing at her apartment. She had created this, protected it, hidden it, and I wasn't supposed to know. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, tracking every movement she made. At 11:43 p.m., she slipped out of bed. I kept my eyes closed. I listened as her footsteps padded softly down the hall. Not to the bathroom, not to the kitchen, to the hallway closet. The creak of the door, the whisper of towels shifting, then silence. When I got up 20 minutes later, the closet door was ajar, just slightly. The tablet was gone. She returned to bed just past 1 a.m., the scent of lavender lotion clinging to her skin. "You okay?" I asked, feigning sleepiness. "Yeah," she murmured. "Couldn't sleep. Read a little." I nodded. "Missed you." She kissed my cheek, and it stung. The next morning, I checked the watch history again. Sure enough, she'd watched 2 episodes of a show about secret relationships unraveling under pressure. But it wasn't just the shows. It was the messages. That's where the real invasion began. The streaming platform had a social feature. Most people ignored it, but not Ben's Place. I hadn't even realized users could send messages. You could, if you linked your account to a shared watch group. Ben's Place was linked to one. Just one. A private circle called Red Room. I joined it with the guest account. There were only 2 users in Red Room. Ben's Place and another account named Riverwind17. No profile picture. But the message log between them was still there. Not long, maybe 15 messages. All recent. Ben's Place. Last night was perfect. Your voice, even through the screen, I dreamed of it. Riverwind17. You always say the right things. I wish I could fall asleep hearing your breath again. Ben's Place. 1 more week. Then it's us. Completely. Riverwind17. I'm scared. But I want it. Ben's Place. He won't see it coming. I read those lines over and over until the words blurred. They were talking about me. She was planning something. Something that didn't involve me. I tried to match the timestamps to our life. The night she came home late from book club. The weekend she went to her sister's cabin alone. The random work trip that got extended at the last minute. Each message lined up with one of those events like puzzle pieces sliding into place. I needed more. I had to know who this Riverwind17 was. But the app didn't share account details, not without a warrant, and I was far from involving the authorities. Not yet. So I tried something else. I created a dummy profile in Red Room, pretending to be a mutual friend. I sent a message. Watcher9. Hey, I saw you 2 chatting. You guys make a great couple. No response for hours. Then late that night, a reply. Riverwind17. Who is this? I replied casually. Watcher9. Just someone who admires from afar. You're lucky to have each other. Riverwind17. Leave us alone. Just that. Cold. Direct. But I had my confirmation. They were in contact. They were emotionally involved. And they thought no one knew. But now I did. The next morning, I woke early. Laura was still asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and looked at her. This woman I thought I knew so completely. Her hand curled gently around her pillow. Her hair a messy halo on the sheets. She looked innocent. And yet, her digital fingerprint told another story. I went downstairs, made coffee, and stared out at the backyard where our twins' toys were scattered across the lawn like forgotten memories. I thought about the night we bought this house, how we walked through every room holding hands, dreaming about the future. I thought about the first time I saw her cry at a movie, the way she gripped my arm and whispered, "I don't ever want to lose this." Maybe she meant it at the time, but now, she was preparing to throw it all away. I needed something concrete. Not just messages, not just hunches. I needed a face. A name. Something I could confront. Something undeniable. So I installed a keystroke logger on the tablet. Took less than 10 minutes. I'd been in IT for over a decade. This wasn't new to me. I set it to auto-upload logs to my cloud drive. Every time she used the device, I'd know what she typed. Every password. Every message. Every search. For 3 days, I waited. And then, on the 3rd night, just after midnight, the logs uploaded. I opened them on my office computer and started reading. She'd logged into a private email, Riverwind17@protonmail.com. Password, Laura Always 123. That was it. Proof. In that inbox were dozens of messages with one name repeated over and over again. Ben Carter. The subject lines were casual, thinking of you. Tuesday, next steps. But the content? The content would tear through the walls of any marriage. I watched you log in tonight. I missed your face. He has no idea. He still believes I'm working late. It's almost too easy. This weekend, I'll say I'm going to my sister's again. The kids will be with him. I'll be yours. You make me feel alive again, Ben. I don't even feel guilty anymore. Every line carved into me like glass. I scrolled to the oldest message, the one that started it all. Hi, Ben. I can't stop thinking about our conversation. I've made a profile so we can watch together, if you want. You always said you like to start your nights with a good story. The date? For months ago. That's how long she'd been lying to me. Deceiving me under our roof. Building a secret world, one late-night episode at a time. And now, she was preparing to leave. That part was clear. The messages had escalated. There was talk of our apartment, of how she was counting down the days, of how he'll never understand, but it doesn't matter anymore. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning to vanish from my life like I was a placeholder she'd finally outgrown. I leaned back in my chair, the house quiet around me. Too quiet. Then I heard it. The creak of the floor upstairs. Soft, careful. She was awake. She was coming down. I didn't move. I let the glow of the screen illuminate my face as she appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, her eyes curious and heavy with sleep. What are you doing up? She asked. I looked at her and forced a calm smile. Just watching something. And I was watching the final moments of the life we once had. There's a certain quiet that descends after betrayal. Not the screaming, crashing chaos you might expect. It's subtle, like the hush before a storm or the way a house settles after midnight. That's where I lived now, in that breathless silence where nothing had collapsed yet, but everything had already changed. The morning after Laura caught me downstairs, I moved through the motions like a shadow of myself. She didn't ask what I'd been watching. She didn't press. Maybe she sensed something had shifted, or maybe she was too wrapped up in her own secret countdown to care. Either way, I was thankful. I needed time. I needed a plan. I knew her lover's name now, Ben Carter, and that name was the match I needed to ignite something far more deliberate than anger. For weeks, I had been gathering pieces, but now the image was clear. Laura wasn't just cheating. She was preparing to replace me, and she thought I didn't know. Ben Carter. The name sat heavy in my mind as I searched. It wasn't uncommon, but with the email tied to it, I narrowed it down. LinkedIn gave me a face. He was local, a freelance consultant, late 30s, average height, square jaw, with a touch of gray in his beard, and smug. Even in a professional headshot, he looked smug. I stared at that photo a long time, wondering if he'd walked past me in a grocery store, if he'd watched my kids from a distance while Laura lied and called it girls' night, if he'd heard my voice in the background of their calls and smirked to himself, knowing I was the fool in the dark. I could have confronted him. I could have driven to his listed address and pounded on the door, but that would have been too easy, too obvious. No, if Laura had built a secret life in the shadows, then that's where I'd dismantle it. I created a new email address, anonymous, untraceable. Then I drafted a message. Short, precise. Ben, thought you should know your name's showing up on our streaming account. My wife didn't mention you, but you've been keeping us company every night. We should talk. Her husband. I didn't send it. Yet. It was leverage now. A loaded chamber I could point in either direction. Instead, I focused on collecting more. I combed through Laura's call logs and bank records. She used a separate debit card linked to a secondary checking account I'd forgotten existed. One we'd opened early in the marriage for side expenses. She had been using it frequently over the past 2 months. Small transactions at boutique cafes, ride shares, a florist in a nearby suburb. But one charge stood out. A reservation confirmation at a place called the Black Elm, a high-end cabin retreat nestled about 2 hours north, tucked into the mountains. The confirmation was dated for the coming weekend. 2 guests, 3 nights, paid in full. I stared at the booking receipt and felt something crack open inside me. She wasn't just going to him. She was taking a piece of our life and repackaging it for someone else. I remembered how she used to beg for a weekend away when the kids were still infants, how we never made time. And now, suddenly, she had all the time in the world. It wasn't a business trip. It wasn't a girls' weekend. It was goodbye. She hadn't told me yet, but I could feel it coming. Her patience had thinned. She answered with fewer words, kissed me with less warmth. She was detaching, already drifting to wherever Ben was waiting. I could have let her go, pretended I was too dignified to dig, too proud to react. But pride doesn't protect you when your family's being stolen in increments. So I made preparations of my own. I took Thursday off under the pretense of needing a mental health day. Laura left for work early, as usual. I waited half an hour, then started turning the house upside down. This time not for devices, but for intent. In the back of her closet, behind an old garment bag from a wedding years ago, I found it. A duffel bag, packed and zipped. Inside, jeans, sweaters, underthings, perfume, and a single bottle of wine. The same vintage we drank on our 5th anniversary. Tucked between her clothes was a sealed envelope with my name on it. My throat dried instantly. I didn't open it. Not yet. Just seeing it was enough. This was it. She was going to leave. Probably while I took the kids out for the weekend like we'd planned. I'd come home to silence and a letter. I placed everything back exactly as I found it. Took photos of every item, the bag, the envelope. Then I stepped out into the garage, sat in my car, and just breathed. Long, shallow breaths that barely moved my chest. If she wanted to vanish, I'd make sure she did. But not on her terms. Back inside, I pulled up Ben Carter's consulting website. Generic. Clean. A contact form buried at the bottom. This time, I sent the message. Mr. Carter, I think you know who I am. You've been getting cozy in my life while I wasn't looking. Consider this your only chance to walk away quietly. She won't tell you what I know. She won't tell you what's coming. But it's already in motion. Me? No reply. Not immediately. That evening, Laura was oddly cheerful. She made pasta from scratch, lit candles, played soft jazz on her phone. A part of me wanted to believe it was guilt. Another part feared it was just rehearsal for her next performance. With him. As we sat eating, she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. You've seemed off this week, she said gently. I forced a smile. Work stuff. She nodded. If you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. The gall. I looked into her eyes and thought, you're a better liar than I ever gave you credit for. That night, I watched her sleep. Peaceful. Untouched by remorse. Whatever conflict she had once felt was long gone. And the next morning, I got my reply. An email. Blank subject line. If you think threatening me will change anything, you're wrong. She made her choice. You should respect it. This doesn't concern you anymore. Ben. I stared at those words. She made her choice. Yes. Yes, she had. And now it was my turn. Friday morning, I sent the kids to my parents early, using the excuse of wanting them to enjoy an extended visit. Laura was at work, finishing her last day before the retreat. She didn't question it. If anything, she looked relieved. While she was gone, I installed a single, hidden camera in the living room, tucked into a decorative vase on the bookshelf. Not because I needed more proof, because I needed a record. At 4:17 p.m., Laura came home. She didn't call out for me. Instead, she moved through the house with quiet purpose. Straight to the closet, retrieved the duffel bag, paused, then slipped the letter onto the coffee table. She stood there for a long time, just staring at it. Then, without a word, she walked out the door. No hesitation, no tears, just gone. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I walked into the living room and picked up the letter. Still sealed. Still waiting to betray me one last time. I didn't open it. Not yet. I wasn't finished. I pulled up the tracking app I'd installed on her phone days earlier. I watched the blue dot travel steadily north, straight toward the cabin. The Black Elm. So that's where she wanted to build her new life. Perfect. I grabbed my keys, my overnight bag, and one final addition, an envelope of my own. Tucked inside was a printed photo collage. The viewing history. Screenshots of the messages. The call logs. The streaming profile. And one note. You were right. I never saw it coming. But now you'll never forget what it looks like when I do. Your husband. The cabin's check-in was listed at 6 p.m. I left the house at 5:20. Time to pay Ben a visit. The mountains looked different that evening. Bluer, somehow. As if twilight had dyed everything in cool resignation. I drove in silence, the road curling upward through pine forests and steep switchbacks, my hands calm on the wheel, my heart a glacier beneath the skin. There were no second thoughts, no panic, just precision. Laura had orchestrated her exit. I was simply moving the curtain aside before her final act. The cabin was exactly as advertised, modern, rustic, absurdly private. Nestled into a hilltop with a panoramic view of a lake and a long stretch of silence in every direction. I parked a few dozen yards down the road, well out of sight, and approached on foot, the gravel under my boots muffled by moss and damp earth. It was 6:23 p.m. when I reached the edge of the clearing. Inside the cabin, lights glowed warmly. The silhouette of a man moved across the kitchen window, tall and lanky. Ben, a woman, Laura, entered the frame moments later, her hand brushing his shoulder. They kissed. I watched from the trees. The kiss wasn't tentative. It wasn't guilty. It was the kiss of people unburdened. The kiss of two people who had erased someone else from their future. I stayed there a moment longer, until the bile at the back of my throat turned into a steady, burning resolve. Then I walked away. Not far, just back down the road to where I'd left the car. I didn't want confrontation. Not yet. I wanted clarity, timing, finality, and something poetic. Back at the car, I pulled out my phone and connected to the cabin's Wi-Fi. It was unsecured, typical of rental properties. I knew what I was doing. With a few keystrokes, I accessed the network devices. The smart TV in the living room was first. I logged into the streaming app. Ben's place was already signed in. Perfect. From my phone, I triggered a screencast. A message appeared on the TV as they settled onto the couch, wine glasses in hand. Hi, Laura. Hope you're enjoying the show. I watched her body jerk upright. Ben leaned forward. She stood. He reached for the remote, fumbling. Before they could shut it off, I pushed the next image. A still from the messages, Laura's words, her lies. He has no idea. He still believes I'm working late. It's almost too easy. Then a second message. This weekend, I'll say I'm going to my sister's again. The kids will be with him. I'll be yours. Ben stood now, pacing. Laura looked sick, pale, stiff. The wine glass shook in her hand. I triggered the final message. Smile, you're being recorded. And I meant it. The camera I'd placed earlier that day in the living room vase at home, it was streaming live to the cloud. Every word, every movement. I had the proof. But this was the unveiling. Laura grabbed her phone. I saw her lips move, likely trying to call me. She wouldn't get through. I'd blocked her number an hour ago. Let her panic. Let Ben stare at her like a stranger now, wondering what else she had hidden. Let the cracks form between them. I wasn't going to scream or fight or cry. I was going to let them rot in the discomfort of their own making. While they scrambled inside the cabin, I slid the envelope from my bag, the one with everything. I walked down to the front door, placed it on the welcome mat, and knocked 3 sharp times. Then I walked away. I didn't wait to see who opened it. I didn't want to hear the apologies, or lies, or weak justifications. I drove back down the mountain in the dark, the headlights slicing through the trees like blades. My hands didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. It was done. At home, the kids were still gone, safely tucked away at my parents' until Sunday night. I poured a glass of water, sat in the living room, and looked at the letter Laura had left. Still unopened. My hands hovered over it. Finally, I broke the seal. Dear Nate, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to write. I've made a decision, and by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Ben wasn't supposed to be anything serious. It started with messages, with loneliness, with feeling invisible. I know that's not fair to you. I know you've done everything for this family. But I lost myself, Nate. Somewhere between the kids and the calendar and all the dinners and dishes, I stopped feeling like a person. With him, I felt seen again. Desired. Alive. I know that sounds selfish. It is. But it's the truth. I didn't want to do this to the kids. I didn't want to make them suffer. But I couldn't keep pretending. I hope one day you can forgive me. I hope you'll remember the good years and not just this ending. I'll be back for my things next week. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I don't want to fight you. I just want to move forward. I'm sorry. Laura, I sat with that letter for a long time. Not because I believed it. Because it confirmed everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry. She was gone long before she walked out that door. The next morning, I forwarded all documentation to my lawyer. The messages, the viewing history, the time-stamped footage, even the contents of the envelope left at the cabin. Everything. She wanted a peaceful separation. She would get one, on paper. But behind the scenes, I was already working on something far more permanent. That Sunday, I gathered every object in the house that had once belonged to us. Framed wedding photos, anniversary cards, the trinkets we collected on trips, even her favorite coffee mug. I boxed it all, drove it to the cabin just after checkout time. No one was there. No cars in the driveway. No sign of her. I left the box on the same welcome mat and drove away. That evening, as the sun sank low, my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. How could you do this? That was it. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked into the kids' room and sat by their beds. The twins were still at my parents', but I sat anyway, staring at their blankets, their books, their little lives. I thought about the future, about rebuilding, about the fact that even if Laura tried to come back, even if she changed her mind, the version of her I once loved had expired quietly in the dead of night. That woman no longer existed. All that remained was someone else's echo. And echoes don't get second chances. At 2 a.m., I received one more message. Same number. You're not who I thought you were. I smiled bitterly, turned off my phone, and whispered into the dark. You never knew me at all. But I was just getting started. The days that followed passed with unnatural calm. Laura stayed silent. Ben, too. I imagined they were licking their wounds, recalibrating, wondering what I knew, when I'd known it, how long I'd been steps ahead of them. Maybe they argued about it. Maybe they didn't speak at all. I didn't care. What I cared about was tying off the frayed threads of what had once been our life. There would be no reconciliation, no dramatic sit-down, no weeping over lost vows. There would only be consequences. My lawyer, Ellis, moved swiftly. With the documentation I provided, the messages, the live footage, the reservation details, her signed letter, the case was unshakable. In our state, infidelity still carried weight in divorce proceedings, especially when children were involved. Ellis drafted the papers with surgical precision. Full custody, no spousal support, mandatory therapy before any future visitation. Laura had initiated this ending, but I would write the final lines. She tried to contact me, of course. The text came first, a half dozen in the span of a day. Nate, please. We can talk about this. You're hurting me. The kids need both of us. You're being cruel. This isn't fair. Each one bled self-pity, a desperate shuffle to reclaim the narrative. I didn't reply. Then came the email. Long, carefully written. She wanted understanding. Claimed she never meant to abandon the family. Just needed to find herself. Said Ben wasn't the reason. Just a mirror for what was missing. She asked if we could meet. Talk. I printed it out. Highlighted a single line. This was never about hurting you. Then I dropped it in a folder labeled Delusions. Let her keep her illusions. I had facts. When she finally came to the house to collect her things, I wasn't there. Ellis had arranged everything. She arrived to find her belongings boxed in the garage, labeled and inventoried, with a third-party rep present to supervise. I watched through the Ring camera as she stood there, stunned, the weight of her new reality bearing down at last. She didn't cry. Not then. But she did when she saw the family portrait was missing. The one we took just last year at the beach. Our twins wrapped around her arms. Her head leaned against mine like we were some unbreakable unit. I had it removed weeks ago. Burned it in the fire pit after sending a digital copy to her inbox titled, Memories Aren't Evidence. Let her mourn the ghost of what she destroyed. Ben? He stayed invisible. Never showed his face. Never sent another word. I assume he thought Laura was no longer worth the fallout. Maybe he realized the woman who betrayed her family could one day betray him, too. Maybe he moved on to another willing accomplice. Cowards tend to run in circles. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Swift. Uneventful. The judge reviewed the evidence, nodded grimly, and signed the order. Just like that, I was free. But freedom didn't feel like fireworks or champagne. It felt like stillness. Like waking from anesthesia and realizing your limbs are still attached, even if you don't feel them quite yet. It took time. The twins adjusted faster than I expected. I kept their routines stable: school, breakfast waffles on Saturdays, our silly Friday dance nights. I never spoke ill of Laura. Never answered their questions with anything but gentle honesty. Mommy lives somewhere else now. Mommy made some choices. But Daddy's not going anywhere. They didn't need the full story. Not yet. And me? I found something unexpected in the silence. Peace. A strange, unfamiliar peace that crept in around the edges like soft moss reclaiming stone. The kind you only get when the noise finally stops. I deleted the streaming account. Every trace of Ben's place, gone. Created a new one under a new email, new password. Just one profile, Dad and Company. One night, weeks later, I was browsing titles with the twins when I saw a new documentary on betrayal. How digital footprints expose secrets no one meant to leave behind. I chuckled quietly. Too soon. Instead, we watched a goofy animated film about a clumsy raccoon trying to hold his little family together. My son leaned against me. My daughter fell asleep halfway through, her head in my lap. That was the real show. That was everything. Still, sometimes, when the house is quiet and the lights are low, I remember that night. The screen, the message, the moment everything I thought was solid turned to vapor. And I remember what it taught me. Not about Laura. About myself. I was always more patient than she ever knew. More observant. More dangerous, in the way quiet water is dangerous. Calm until it pulls you under. I never screamed. Never chased. Never begged. Instead, I let the truth unfold. Let her step into it with both feet, thinking she had won. And when it surrounded her, undeniable, unshakable, I simply stepped back and watched her drown in it. There was no rage in my revenge. Only symmetry. A quiet man. A quiet betrayal. And the loudest exit she never saw coming.